All right, we're back in open session. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
So the first item is public comment. We have public comment now at the beginning of the meeting. We also have public comment at the end of the meeting if everyone wants to make a comment then. We ask that you state your name and your address, and if you're representing a group, please say the name of the group. And if you keep comments to less than 5 minutes, that would be desirable. So it looks like we only have one person speaking today, Mary Lang Judy. So if you'd like to.
Good evening. I'm Mary Judy, and I live on Northwood Road in Riverside. I'm one of the founding members of RAIN, the Riverside Area Inclusion Network. So my comments this evening are a follow-up to an issue I raised on behalf of RAIN during the April 21st board meeting regarding the parents' role in special education policy decisions as outlined by Section 1118, Title I of the No Child Left Behind Act. More specifically, Section 1118 requires that every school district and every school receiving Title I dollars must have a written parent involvement policy as well as build school capacity to effectively implement the parent policy provisions. I'm happy to say that I learned through my neighborhood PTO volunteers that Mrs. Shaw soon spoke to the PLT not long after my comments to request that a special needs liaison position be established on every PTO and PTA. These reps attend PTO and PTA meetings at the various schools they represent and share ideas with their homeschool parent organizations, each other, and with Mrs. Shaw. And I wanted to bring to everyone's attention that specific framework that Mrs. Shaw implemented is exactly the reason that RAIN was formed back in 2008. That's exactly how we intended to do it. I'm sorry, my eye is got something in it. In any event, so that's exactly the structure that we intended, and that's what we approached. So we can't tell you how grateful we are at this point in time, 7 years later, to have this actually put into place exactly the way that we wanted to. And many of the people that have responded on the PTOs and PTAs to this position are indeed RAIN parents that have worked with us for many, many years. So, so our concerns about Title I compliance have been resolved, and for that we'd like to thank Mrs. Shaw and the board for your quick work in addressing that issue. So now, on to bigger and better concerns about meeting the needs of all of our students, no matter what the identifications are as gifted learners, athletes, wheelchair-bound, computer whiz kids, student body president, class clown, you name it. We want everybody getting the education they deserve. RAIN recently sent the board an article from the June 24th issue of the Chicago Tribune, which explained the settlement agreement that IHSA was required to pay to a family for not exercising inclusive practices outlined by state policies with some Illinois athletes. The point of the article was to exhibit to the board how widely expected and accepted inclusive practices are among state-regulated organizations. Illinois is not known as a progressive state. Mrs. Shaw will back me up on that, I'm sure, 100%, when it comes to providing services for our most vulnerable citizens. As a matter of fact, Illinois regularly shows up at the bottom of the list. So, to see that the courts are even pursuing judgments against the state sports organizations tells us just how important and widely accepted these inclusive practices are. In the same note, I used an example from the past year where one of our athletes was excluded in a District 96 school and the lengths that were required to resolve the issue. And it was amicably resolved, but there was residual damage from it. My point in doing that was to shine light on the opportunity that we have at this point in time in District 96 because of all the changes that we're implementing at all levels of staff and administration. With these changes, now is the time to ensure that the professionals that we're employing to work with our students are highly trained and have an in-depth understanding of what truly inclusive standards and practices look like within their classrooms. We don't want our district or our community to be the subject of any more of Bob's articles or the Chicago Tribune's or the Washington Post or anything else. We want our educational norms that have been in place around the country for more than a decade to hit home here in Riverside too. So please, do whatever is necessary to ensure that District 96 is now hiring educators that can help our small district not only implement inclusive practices in every classroom, the cafeterias, the hallways, the playgrounds, the athletic fields, everywhere that our kids are involved together as a community. But find the people that are going to lead the charge to help us be that sought-after school district that defines success for each one of our learners. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
We appreciate your comments on that topic. There are no more public comments, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is, are there any proposed changes or deletions to the agenda by any board member? There's no proposed changes. We move on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. This is a perfect day to do this. I don't know if the public, 100% of the public realizes, but board members serve at no compensation. And so we decided after the negotiating team spent a long day today, we're going to triple your salary and get you up to 3 times 0 or 0, I guess, is what it comes out to be. The dedication that people that serve on boards exhibit, the amount of time that's spent, certain years are different than others. Negotiations obviously eats up an awful lot of time, and the commitment to the 3 people on the board, Rachel and Rich and Sherry is just very much appreciated. And we had a long session today, and hopefully we will continue having these good interactions. But it speaks highly to the fact that there's a very nice line of communication right now between board, I think, and faculty at this point. So I want to thank you for that. We've got a couple of people in the audience that you guys hired last month that most of you haven't met yet. So I'm going to ask the new Hauser Middle School principal, April, May, June, July, August, September. Nobody laughed the last time I said that, but this time we should. Yeah. And April had a chance to meet Jeff the other day, but I don't believe anybody else has had that opportunity. So April has hit the ground running, and I think she's had a lot of interaction with faculty already, and we're feeling a lot of positive vibrations going on right now. The next lady, some of you may know, thank you, April. This lady was around here a long time ago and then decided to come back. Kim Hefner, why don't you stand up, the new Hollywood principal. And we are so pleased that she decided to rejoin us, I guess. And very honestly, with her background in early childhood, in fact, she was the one, I think the press release said, opened up a brand new early childhood center in Carroll Stream. And the fact that she's at Hollywood School now with that early childhood program really meshes well with the place she's going to be and her expertise. So we appreciate you decided to come back and join us. In spite of all the things that, no, I'm only kidding. All your old colleagues told you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next thing was to comment on the change of the starting times. I've gotten all kinds of feedback from people. It would be nice. When I was a middle school principal, everybody wanted last period as a planning period. And I kept saying to them, well, I can't do that because with 600 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, I can't put them all in the gym at one time. And this is one of these, you can't please everybody. What we did with the middle school schedule was lengthen the middle school day to put us pretty much in the average for middle school students. It's a 7-hour and 5-minute day. It's increased the instructional time considerably so that there will now be 6 instructional hours. We've got the block scheduling, which has the 80-minute block for ELA as well as now for math. And so we're looking forward to a real positive growth and an opportunity for students to really delve into those subject areas, to a greater degree. The problem is, research tells us middle school students should be starting later, maybe 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, when their minds are finally functioning. And what we are going to do, April and I, once we get the school year started, we're going to talk to all of the feeder schools, because part of the problem is if you end your day too late, you're going to have a problem with after-school activities. And, you know, nobody is going to want to wait for the basketball team to arrive an hour after the game should have been started. And so if we can get some kind of consensus on what research says, but right now if we had kept that 8:35 starting time, the ending time would have been 3:40. And believe me, that would have put a real monkey wrench in the works. The other thing we did in the Hauser schedule was we added a minute passing period. So now you might safely or more safely walk down the hallway. Rather than 2 minutes, they're going to have a third minute to navigate through the crowd. And we've actually included at the end of the day an advisory period that will be daily. And it's not very long, but it will give Meryl an opportunity to talk with teachers about different subjects that can come up, whether it's a bullying, a real quick session about, what you need to do in situations like that, whether it's just I have the opportunity to go see my science teacher at the end of last period to get some science help, because all of the middle school teachers will be on duty during that advisory period at the end of the day. The elementary people, in order to get rid of the traffic jam around here, which I don't think is solvable when you have 1,000 students and you've got elementary and middle school on the same campus, we kind of massage that number so that at least there would be a gap time between the drop off and the ending times. In a perfect world, if these buildings weren't connected, it would have been a lot easier to write schedules. But because you only have one cafeteria in this area, Hauser has to have 3 lunch periods, Central needs 2. And so in order for kids not to be having lunch at 9 o'clock in the morning or kids eating at 1:30 in the afternoon, we really had to put those numbers together the way they shook out. Not going to please everybody, but one of the things we look forward to is as this schedule unfolds with the block scheduling, we're hopeful that maybe we can talk to other middle schools and maybe we can flip the starting times where the younger kids will start earlier and the middle school kids will start later. But that was kind of the end result, and I hope the end result is going to be a lot more instructional time and a lot more productive instructional time for students at the middle school level. Professional development plans, that's really going to come out of what Meryl is going to tell you later about some of the board goals for the upcoming year, so I'll defer that one. Let me get to the kindergarten update. With the expertise of this gentleman sitting next to me, with what is that program called again? Where you're able to map things and figure out how much walking time there would be in between things. We did move some students around these flexible boundaries, but right now the kindergarten enrollment still sits not necessarily historically low, but pretty darn low. We've only got at this point, after this morning and checking with the latest enrollment, 119 kindergarten students. Now, if you project that out over 9 grade levels, your enrollment's going to drop down under 1,100. Not likely, it's probably a bubble, but as of right now, with some of the students that we moved, we were concerned about overcrowding at Ames, and so we've moved some students, and as of right now, we don't seem to have any problems with any of the kindergarten areas except at one school. Hollywood right now just got the 21st person today. And so when we get to August, if it still sits at that, we'll have to ask the board for the exemption. But I would be very adverse to asking a kindergarten student that lives on the other side of First Avenue, to come this way. It wouldn't work. But we did have Hollywood up to 21 before, and somebody moved out. It went back to 20. Today it went back up to 21. So we'll bring you up to date at the August 18th meeting and ask for the exemption at that point. So kindergarten is sitting in a pretty good spot. Next thing on the agenda was, or on my report, was superintendent search. First step. The board is probably in the not too distant future going to need to sit down and talk through some very important items before we actually put this out and advertise it. And obviously those are going to be just like they would be in negotiations. Salary interests, what would the range be for a position like this? Another one would be, does it have to be an experienced person? Because when this is finally advertised, you're really going to have to put that out there and kind of package what you're looking for in a candidate. And the reason why we're bringing it up now, when the two of us, Griff and I, have just started officially a little over a month ago, is that in order to be able to get the best pool of candidates, you want to get an early start on this. And so the suggestion would be that at least by October, at the latest November, you're advertising it, you're collecting things so that by November, maybe December, you've got your applications in, you screen it down to candidates, and this is something I did 4 years ago in the school district where I was the interim, where we utilized IASB to advertise, but we wound up going through a process and a very extensive interview process, which wound up getting a couple of really good candidates in the pool, one that's still at the school district I was at, and the other person I mentioned to you before wound up as the superintendent of a neighboring district. And so however you go about doing this, timing is of the essence. You need to talk through the structural part to begin with, and then decide when you're going to kind of pull the trigger and start the process moving. So just to make sure we don't lose track of that in the shuffle of time. Although we'd love to stay around for the next 5 or 10 years, give or take a little bit. School improvement time calendar, all of those things right now are revolving around some things that are on the table. Obviously, we wind up with the need to incorporate a lot of programs that are mandated by the state and get our curricular things as up to date as we possibly can. The whole park routine, the Common Core standards, all of those. And so we will be utilizing as much time as possible under Merrill's leadership. And some of those things come out as the goals that were mentioned for board goals for the 2015-2016 school year. So at this point, that's really all I have at this stage of the game.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Pat. I'd like to also thank Mr. Pat for the Hauser schedule changes. When we added 40 minutes of math to the day, we didn't at the time consider what else we have to do to basically make enough time for advisory. And it looked like if we hadn't added the 25 minutes, we would have had to basically do advisory twice a week at the expense of taking a couple of minutes from every academic class. So we basically would have taken science and some of these other classes and cut down the amount of time. And Mr. Pat figured out a way of adding the extra time, the 25 minutes, to the day at the end of the day, and also adding a minute in passing. And the minute in passing doesn't just let the kids, walk more calmly to their classes. It also gives, because kids never, got to their classes on time anyway, it's effectively going to give them an extra minute of instruction time. So I think it's a very good thing. It puts us, as he says, in line, or actually even a little bit above the average school now, whereas before we were about 15 minutes behind for middle schools. Now we're going to be about 10 minutes above, which is really good. So we're hoping that good things are going to happen from that. So then the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is if anyone has anything that they would like to pull off of the consent agenda for a separate vote or a separate discussion. We do have to take off one item, which is the grocery bid, item number 10, because we actually have not gotten that bid, so that we are taking that off of the consent agenda. But are there any other items that anyone would like to take off for a separate vote or a separate discussion?
I would like to have a discussion on Sync Solutions.
Sync Solutions, so we'll take off item number 8 for a separate discussion and vote. Are there any other items that people would like to have taken off? So with that said, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, with the exception that items 8, Sync Solution, and item 10, the grocery bid, are taken off?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion of any items on the consent agenda then? Okay, can we take the roll, Juanita, please?
Excuse me. Mary Rose Mandia.
Aye.
Rich Regan.
Aye.
Linda Murphy.
Aye.
Rachel Morella.
Aye.
Sherry Kleiber.
Aye.
Randy Brockway.
Aye.
And Jeff Miller.
Aye.
Motion is passed.
All right, so then why don't we then talk about a Sync Solution, item number 8?
Yeah, Merrill, I think maybe there's an assumption that the board is really well familiar with Sync Solution. And it has been around a while, but it has been presented to us as a pilot, and there's a special board policy that sort of has an outline of the type of information that should be presented to the board on pilots, and also a kind of a post wrap-up of an assessment of it. And, you know, is there any time in the foreseeable future that you're going to give us sort of a comprehensive assessment of the value of this thing and the cost, not just in the money in the contract, but sort of the cost in terms of the time of the administrators and substitute teachers, and which was part of at least the initial first year?
Okay, sure, I'll speak to that. It wasn't presented to me as a pilot, so that's new information, but that's helpful to know. And there hasn't been a full-blown assessment on the part of the staff yet in terms of where it sits. So as I walked in and inherited Sync Solution, maybe we can consider this a 2-year pilot to some degree with a price tag. I understand the price tag. Currently, where it sits is it's basically a warehouse of where everything has been uploaded to align the curriculum with the Common Core standards at the moment. And some grade levels have used it pretty extensively to upload resources. Other grade levels have some things in place, and that we're facing some challenges around flexibility of the way the calendar was built in there. And so they're partially aligned, not fully aligned yet. So when I walked in and inherited it, I would consider it probably still in its infancy stages in terms of really being able to flush out how it houses a curriculum. So to pull the plug on that license for this next year would leave the teaching staff in a bit of a quandary around how to access their scope and sequence, their calendaring of their instructional year, and their resources. I talked to Becky, the rep from Sync Solution. We have a meeting set up on August 6th with the majority of the course planners, the teachers that have been loading all this information. And we talked a little bit about assessing early on where we stand with it during this next school year. They're able to dump back the information to us that we've loaded. Don's working, we've been collaborating pretty intensively for them to hook up on their tech side and our tech side to see what kind of format it would be dumped back to us in, and how doable it would be to sort of localize a similar model without maintaining the licensing and the subscription year to year, because that's where the cost comes in, is that annual license fee, which is pretty significant. And how we can use those curriculum dollars to more locally revise and adjust the curriculum and have more local control over the calendaring of the curriculum. So while I don't know if it would have been the choice as the warehouse to do the alignment with, it is what we have. And like I said, for some grade levels, it is working for them. For others, it's been a little more challenging. I have also been able, with Becky, to provide us with a little more flexibility in the calendaring, and also for her to provide some additional time and resources that weren't part of that 2-year plan, to support us in being able to dump it all back so we can assess it. Okay. So we'll do a course planner, like meeting and assessment on August 6th. We will develop a survey to all staff to make sure that if we consider the local, ownership, that we're making sure we're honoring how people feel about it as a resource and a tool. But there have been some challenges in marrying those two things.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
It is essentially a document warehouse, is that what it is?
It did a couple things for us in the initial stages, which wasn't a bad thing. It contains the scope and sequence of all the Common Core standards, and it did provide the objective statements, which helped the teachers to dig down a little further and unpack those standards in more of a quick snapshot as we aligned, so that they could see the scaffolding of the skills. And it laid out a sequence for them to begin to align the curriculum resources that we have. But essentially, after that point in time, it does become more of a warehouse where you're marrying resources to the system to help you calendar your school year. And they do have some assessment tools and pieces in there that are valuable. But again, I think with the knowledge and resources of the combined staff, as well as what I'll bring to this position over time, I see a vision of local ownership down the road.
So basically, you're saying that right now you want to keep it because we sort of started on it, and it'd be hard to just
And it's
just
not in a
drastically
complete
change.
form where
Yeah,
I
but
could dump it back.
keep it
again
for a
in
year, and then you
assessment.
can sort of reevaluate and possibly not
And
not
that would
even
sort of
need
be the
it.
end of our pilot, and we can talk more about the long-term recommendation.
I wanted to maybe publicly thank Mr. Eldenis. I know you did a lot of work, and I appreciate your presentations on Sync Solutions, both at the Hauser Town Hall and for the parents, and here at the board. I learned a lot, and I appreciate the time you spent getting to know that and
And I have to tell
sharing
you,
with
he and I
staff.
have collaborated quite a bit in the last couple of weeks. Steve actually was in last week. He happened to reach out after I sent a meeting
Right.
message to the course planners, and he came in and sat with me with Becky on a phone conference to kind of
Right.
determine from his perspective and what's been happening from a teacher perspective, so I could plan out the next steps. So
Right.
he's been instrumental.
it was really useful for me to hear how the teachers were sharing curricula or something that they found. I appreciate that work that you did. So.
And what I offered to Meryl with
Yeah.
new staff that comes on this year too, I'm going to
He's gonna
work
help
with her
me.
schedule to meet,
Right.
like during new teacher training, to
Right.
give them an overview and intro to Sync Solutions, so that it's not something that they're unfamiliar with. They'll know how to
Yeah.
operate that, pull reports,
Right.
and follow the script and sequence.
Right.
I think it'll probably be the same presentation I gave you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
So are there any other comments about Sync Solution, any other questions? Okay, so shall we vote then? Is there a motion to approve Sync Solutions for 1 year?
So moved. Second?
Juanita, could you call the roll, please? Is there any discussion?
Yeah.
I think we hope we had.
Thank you for bringing that up, though, Mary Rose. I equally have the same concerns as we have had with Sync Solutions over the years of not being really clear. I mean, I know we've had the elaborate presentation of kind of what it was. We never really understood it, and I have not always received positive feedback from other teachers on it. So it's good that, and I understand that we need the time to evaluate
Yeah,
it. So
and-
thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you, and I do realize we're kind of locked into it. I wasn't, we're not going to pull the plug, but
I appreciate it.
but we're being asked to approve this thing, and
I understand.
I would like to understand it as best I
I
can.
have no issue with that.
You were a
and
little
you're
slow
fine.
making the motion though, Mary Rose. You only got a second on that one.
We'll be very transparent as we move forward about
Yeah.
where we stand with it.
Thank you.
All right, so Juanita, can you call the roll, please?
Randy Brockway,
Aye.
Sharon Heiber. Aye. Mary Rose Mandia,
Aye.
Rachel Morella. Aye. Linda Murphy.
Aye.
Rich Regan.
Aye.
And Jeff Miller.
Aye.
And the motion is passed.
All right, the next item is the Riverside Educational Council. Is there any comments from the Riverside Educational Council? I don't see Mr. House here, so I
We
guess,
tired them out today.
Tired them out.
We had enough.
All right, then the next item on the agenda is board member comments. Are there any board member comments about any topic?
This is a new,
This is a new thing that Griffin Pat proposed, where basically board members can comment on district-related activities such as the school play, band, concert, graduation activities, so forth.
Nice way to acknowledge kids. You've seen a performance, or I was at graduation. It really was a very nice experience. Those
Okay.
types of things.
all right, just point of information, just wanted
I would
to know
like
what
to
it was.
thank Ms. Weston for her 13 years of service and wish her the best in her new position.
I want to thank the union negotiators, too.
Yes, Mr. Pat thanked the board volunteers for their time in negotiations, and Mary Rose is proposing we also thank the teachers for their time, because they're putting in an equal amount of time as well. So thank them for the process, which has been a very good process from what I understand so far. Hopefully it'll be continuing. Okay, are there any other comments, or? Okay, then the next item is committee reports. There are a couple of different liaison and representative positions that we have to appoint. The first is IASB liaison, and that's the Illinois Association of School Boards liaison. And Mary Rose, would you like to do that position?
Yes, I'd
Okay.
be happy to.
Okay. The next item is EdRed liaison. EdRed is a consortium of suburban schools that basically keep track of what's happening in Springfield and keep school boards up to date on legislation. Rich, would you like to be the liaison?
I would, thank you.
Okay. And then the final is the student handbook representative from the board. So where the student handbook needs to be revised, we need a board member to basically to help with that process. Sherry, would you like to do that?
Certainly.
Okay, that's 3. And then we have reports. What's that?
Is anybody willing to say no?
Thank you.
You have that look in your eye, it's, better say yes.
It seems to work well.
Are there any reports on any of the committees or subcommittees? I know, Linda, did you have a report on the Facilities and Enrollment Committee?
Yeah, just to give you guys a little update, we met on June 25th with Mr. Pat and Dr. Powell and myself. Mr. Tufano was there as well on the Facilities and Space Committee, and one committee member, Laura Durkin. And it was basically just a meeting to get the ball rolling and try to get some focus and ideas of what we need and start recruiting people. So the next meeting is scheduled for August 5th, the evening of August 5th, and we are looking for community members to be involved. So if anybody has ideas, if anybody would like to be involved, email the Board of Ed and the superintendents. Basically, we discussed, and maybe Pat can help me a little bit if I'm wrong, but my takeaway from it is the first few months, what we're going to be needing to do is just pooling resources, getting diagrams of the buildings and what classrooms are used for what, and are there any unused spaces? Are there any spaces that could be usable with some renovations? Just so that when we move forward throughout the next few years, if all-day kindergarten comes up or world language, we have an idea of what exactly we have, because I don't think the board at this moment feels that that's readily accessible to us. So
And
I think
this might even be something that could segue into the whole strategic long-range planning
Right.
thing too. Because the way those things break down, you frequently have focus groups, and one of those focus groups in this district very likely would be a facilities space committee. It'd be a very logical one to look at, especially with having to call parents and say, your child can't go to Ames. I'd like your child to go to a different district so we can keep the numbers down. That way, if you're able to have enough space. It was a very interesting experience making those phone calls, believe me. And I think Griff let me do those. I don't know why it came out that way, but that's typically one of the main focus groups in a district that really is talking about we don't have space for what we have right now. Now, again, if the
Right.
kindergarten enrollment stays the way it is right now, you might be talking about a whole different
Right.
ballgame here. But this is something that I think could be placed into that strategic planning, long-range planning thing too.
Right.
After it starts moving, and you'll
Right.
have a group of people all ready to go.
Yeah. I think the best first step though is to get the resources, the information, so that all of us have that when we're making
Right.
just,
So, right,
looking
even
out
if
for-
there is a focus group in the strategic planning, they will still need the kind of data that
Sure.
Linda's
Right.
talking about.
Because
That
right
would
now, I
definitely
think
be-
that data's there, I just don't know if it's all together somewhere for us to access, so.
All right, I'd like to make a suggestion about casting, different ways to cast a wide net looking for volunteers. When we did the technology forum, Michael, who agreed to be the chair of that, wrote a letter to the newspaper asking for people to come and, we did that. We asked the village specifically if they could put, I forget what they call their email system. We asked North Riverside through the rec department if they wouldn't mind. We put an invitation on our website and we asked RB. But I'd like to try, and I don't know if this is the right project for that, but penning a little letter telling them what would be involved, that it could well morph into the focus, a strategic plan. But I'd like to see us, at least try
Yeah.
to broaden our communication channels.
I do think as a board, we need to discuss, I completely agree, but maybe in our meeting this weekend, part of the strategic planning, like discuss what exactly the focus of this committee is besides just pooling some resources, because it's pretty broad, facilities and space. So I think before we do that, we need to get a clearer idea of what exactly we want out of this. Is there a goal in mind?
Seems like there's two phases that you've said, these two phases. One
Yeah.
is, as you said, just figuring out what resources we do have
Right.
already. Like what spaces do we have, classrooms, how many classrooms, where are they, what are they being
Right.
used for?
Right.
Are they underutilized, where do we have space, where don't we have space? And for that, we don't need a big committee. That would
Right.
be like probably just
So I would be leery
principals and-
of grabbing people in now and then being like, well, wait 4 months because we don't really have it yet.
And then
So-
once we have the data, we can say, well, what do we do with it?
Yeah, so once we have
It's
the
a
data,
timing thing.
once we have the data and review it and we think there's something we can do with it or we need ideas, then I believe we should.
But because there have been suggestions of names, I mean, we're obviously thinking to staff.
No,
committees.
that wasn't
Okay.
that. That was just suggestions of names for Dr. Paul and Mr. Pat to talk to get
People
more
were
ideas.
just brainstorming.
It was
at
just
that point.
brainstorming.
Okay.
It wasn't
All right.
suggestions of names of people who should be on the committee. It was just,
But I like the idea, if we agree to hire a consultant tonight and then start the strategic planning on Saturday, then if comes up as an important
Mm-hmm.
topic, then we can, talk about how exactly we want to.
right, and if it's a topic in there and we're doing a focus committee, then we don't need another committee on it, right? So I think we need to,
Exactly.
No, I agree. It-
focus a
you
little bit
approach it's
more. And then,
important.
yeah. But I'm glad we started talking about it. I'm glad we had the first meeting because it is something we do need the information, so.
Are there any other committee or subcommittee reports like technology steering or PTA or any of these other committees that we have or subcommittees? Any other reports? Nothing? Okay. Okay, so the next item is new business. And so in preparation for starting the strategic planning, we have just written down on the agenda our current mission statement, our vision statement, our belief statements, and the goals, that we had for last year. And I guess the question we can address this, I guess, on Saturday if we hire a consultant to start the strategic planning is, do we want to revisit the mission statement, the vision, the belief statements, or do we think they're sort of good enough as they are and focus on more concrete plans? But just so we have them written down, here is what they are. And I guess they've been this way for some time, although
Yeah.
Mary Rose said the vision statement is new to the last few years. The mission
Yeah,
statement
the vision statement is new.
has been
Yeah,
around-
sure.
Vision statement's been around for a while, has it not? Or
Yeah.
Vision is new. The 5 schools, 1 district, operating excellence for every child, every day is the vision. I guess you said that was a relatively new.
It was Bob.
Right, I was going to say that part is new.
And the
the
mission
vision.
statement to provide each student a challenging education which promotes academic excellence, encourages creativity, develops critical thinking,
Is new.
and fosters respect for self, community, and the environment. That's something that I think that's been that way for some time.
Yeah, I don't think the others have
Changed, which
at
I think
all.
is, to me, honestly, I look at them and they seem to be quite good as they are. I don't see any particular reason to change them, but we can certainly talk about that.
You can do a lot of wordsmithing in these things, but the end result
And
is
it's
pretty similar.
Similar to
Right.
started with.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that said, the goals for last year were academic and professional excellence to ensure innovative and challenging experiences to optimize teaching and learning, financial and operational excellence to establish and maintain fiscally responsible and efficient processes for long-term district success, and rigorous communications to communicate in a purposeful manner to all stakeholders the current vision, mission, and goals. Okay, no, that was the statement. So now we move on to what our tentative goals are for the next school year, and we have 4 that are listed here. 2 of them are fairly clear that we need to do. The first 2, first is the superintendent search, and the second is the comprehensive strategic plan. And then there are 2 sort of curriculum instructional goals that Meryl will talk about. But before we get to that, maybe we can talk a little bit about the superintendent search. Mr. Pat said that we should get started on that relatively soon.
Yeah, and I think saying or April 1st is probably even a little late in the system.
Probably
I mean,
weeks of February, maybe?
a lot of districts will do this by February.
Right, so basically, the
Right.
goal would be to have finished the search and hired someone by February.
You want to be able to have the opportunity to vet the person very thoroughly. You want to do an on-site visit. Part of the problem with what's happened with the pension system in Illinois, it used to be a lot of superintendents would retire from one state and come to Illinois to be vested in the second system. But when they changed the tiers, there haven't been as many out-of-state candidates. And so, hopefully, when you find this final candidate that you can actually do the on-site visit for, you won't have to take off on a plane to be able to go and do it. It might take a little drive, out west in Illinois or a little bit south, but you really want want to get the ball rolling so that you're ahead of the curve on this one. Because every year, a lot of districts are looking to fill that superintendent vacancy, and if you wait too long, you sometimes get what's left over in the process.
So do you propose that we start talking about this in earnest at the next board meeting, or we have a special meeting, or how do you propose?
Well, I think some of this, obviously, if you're talking about compensation, would be things that, would be discussed in closed session. But I could see where, once we start school, maybe in September, we really could get into this and start the discussion at that point.
Okay.
If you start in September, you can be advertising in October, you can collect the documents in November, you can even start bringing people in for an initial screening in December.
Okay.
And have it in place, not long after Christmas.
Okay.
Pat, all of these goals will have action plans, and when will they be written and be available, for the board or anybody else to review?
Well, I think what I just said could be put into some kind of an action plan statement, because I really was talking about by this time we'll do this, by this time we'll do that. The comprehensive strategic plan will probably come out of...
on Saturday.
Yeah, on Saturday. And literally the two that Meryl was talking about would be very easy, I think, to codify into an action plan. And
They also should flush out the strategic planning process depending on if we have an instructional focus as a part of that plan as well. And there would also be some flushing out of those in
Well-
terms of objectives and action plans also.
Well, again, I think our target date for the delivery of a strategic plan is shown as May.
Right, we can move that.
Could be moved up.
February or something.
Yeah.
Well,
The
but
two
I guess,
instructional goals are not intended to be one-year goals, and I'll get into those in a
Right.
second.
yeah, and, but that's also my point. We want to kind of know what you're working on before that strategic plan is delivered, whatever that date happens to be. And, you're not going to, hold on your action plans until,
Correct.
and,
So you want me to start to speak?
Maybe this is a good time for you to tell us about what.
And here's Meryl.
Little show. Thank you again, everybody, for the opportunity. I've been digging my heels in since I got here, and I'm going to set up a cot down there this second. But I really like it. I can't see the nice weather, so I don't worry about what I'm missing right now. As far as these goals, I have one grammatical correction just to help it read a little bit better on that first one. Griff gave you this final version before I had a chance to circle back with him. So on the first one, I'm just going to read, two minor changes. Provide all students with access to a consistent, innovative, so take out that first line, rigorous instructional program grounded in best practice as concise by a fully articulated and aligned curriculum. And then, I know it's a long sentence, and normally I would never teach kids to write this way, but instead of a semicolon, and individualized instruction determined by a comprehensive formal and informal assessment framework with an appropriate multi-tiered system of support. That is a long, complex sentence. Let me simplify that for you. Basically, what that goal is talking about is to complete the curricular alignment with the standards, to have an assessment framework by which we can measure student progress and student growth aligned to that system, and then also have the RTI system support what's now called a multi-tiered system of support. So the RTI acronym is sort of going away, and it's becoming, the language at the state level is now a multi-tiered system of support. And that comprehensively should all be working together. And right now, we kind of have silos started out there, and so what I want to do is sort of build the farm around it so that all of our things are aligned and organized and systematic and connected. Nothing should be done in isolation of the other. So Pam and I have been working really collaboratively. It actually impacts Dawn as well, because there's technology pieces to some of the programming that we're doing, and getting all of those systems in place so that we have a clearly articulated curriculum where you'll know exactly what the standards look like and the outcomes are for students. We will have an assessment framework by which we can measure our success, and then we will have a system of support when we're identifying students that are at risk or that need enrichment. So that's the goal in a nutshell.
So if you were to give us a simple example, you said not everything is not exactly the way it should be right now. What's an example of that?
So for example, right now with RTI, we're kind of doing that over here, and we haven't necessarily structured that to look at how it's relating to the core. So as we align our core to the standards and say okay, the middle school's doing Carnegie math, we have some pieces of My Math and how are we going to articulate more of a K-5 comprehensive math program. How do those align? And then what intervention programs support kids at risk that are in relationship to the core we're delivering? So right now, some of our interventions are standing in isolation, and we haven't looked at whether or not those interventions are actually supporting what the gaps are in the core. So we need to, so we have started some things and needed to, and it's not that anything we've done so far isn't correct or accurate, we just haven't connected the dots to be sure that things are really tight around how we're doing them. And part of it is because we haven't finished developing that alignment to Common Core, the core still is not super solidified yet, 100%, and I think Steve could shake his head to that, and Barbie probably too, and math and ELA. So once we get that all connected, we'll be able to assess how those interventions are supporting our core, what our core is doing for our kids, and then having assessments that are more classroom-based and not just standardized to tell us how we're performing. So having some common assessments that teachers can be using across grade levels, across content, that will give us a better, much better barometer than something like a MAP assessment will, or a PARCC, which those are great, big overarching checks, but that would hopefully be the goal in the end. So we're gonna start right now with finishing the alignment to the core, beginning to look at a universal systematic screening system for identifying the at-risk kids, working with kind of the interventions we have now, and then looking towards next year to layer in the intervention pieces a little bit more systematically and identify what those should be, and then also work on the assessment piece as well.
When you say next year, are you talking
In
about?
terms of programmatic changes, not that we're not going to not run RTI, but we'll be able to identify some core intervention programs that will be better. Like, can't do it all at once, Randy. You just can't. So
I understand.
We've got to scaffold the core, get that
Yeah.
solid, then reassess what those intervention programs are and how they're aligning.
Sure.
We had a great meeting today with the math interventionists just about beginning to have those conversations around how we're doing those things.
Okay, Meryl, thank you. And what I would like to know is, will you be putting down on paper, the specific steps, you know, what you'll be doing, step 1, step 2, step 3, and who's doing them, when they're gonna be delivered? You know, Don knows I like Gantt charts. I'm not expecting that, but
Well, what we'd like to do is once the board approves whatever those goals might look like, and once we have the strategic planning meeting, is to present a template that would have exactly that, the action plan, who's responsible, the timelines, and it would flush it out over the next couple of years to show what would get done when. It's exactly what needs to happen.
so we wouldn't see that until we did the strategic
Probably
planning?
by the fall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you.
You also said that was the first part of your what you
Yeah.
call instructional program, and then you also you
So
had another goal, which is
this-
student success.
The second goal, which is to promote the success of all students by establishing a culture of professional learning, emphasizing continuous improvement in a system within a professional practice framework that examines teaching and learning in connection with student growth. Basically, that's your evaluation system for teachers. I think you had a little bit of a preview in Mary Rose when I was here in June. You asked some really good questions about how is this different? And what you've seen so far are some forms that have been developed that don't really provide the context of how it is different, because it is very different. And the professional practice framework has a much broader lens by which it's looking at teacher evaluation, and it really honors the complexity of teaching and learning. So what I'm doing is working with that performance evaluation team that came together to put the forms together, and actually Bill and Patty and Todd and I are going to meet tomorrow, and then the whole team is going to meet next week and talk a little bit more about creating the context around the system, because ultimately that really impacts student learning and what needs to happen on the teacher side of things, so everybody feels very comfortable in the system that they're going to be evaluated in. And so bringing that training back to the staff so that that professional practice piece is a bit more detailed and a bit more clear to everybody in terms of how it impacts student learning. And then we still are required to also layer in a student growth aspect to that. How are we going to measure the success of our teaching and learning program using student growth measures as a part of that system? We have to get that all completed by the beginning of 16-17.
So is student success primarily PIRA?
Well, we measure student success in a lot of ways. So that's one measurement because of the growth piece in there.
Okay, so that
That's
is,
the whole child piece.
but the PIRA piece is one action plan
Plan to measure.
that supports this goal
Yes,
to further student success.
correct.
Are there others?
Well, and what you'll see is the Danielson framework as a overview of that evaluation system talks more than just about the academic success of children. It's how you communicate with students, it's how you prepare the whole child, it's how you respond to students in the classroom. It's how you engage students in that process. So that framework encompasses all aspects of teacher and practice. And then we're also going to want to establish benchmark goals once we get baseline data from PARC and look at that. We're going to triangulate
So
ourselves.
that's part of it,
Yeah.
getting, assessing the benchmarks and so assessments
It's
and,
all going to work together.
all right, and,
Practical matter, do you,
You'll have a data dashboard on how we're doing with student learning across the board at some point.
okay.
Yeah, and so I also have worked with the MAP data, and I want to begin educating the board about the MAP data and how that's measured and triangulating all the different pieces that we do have, so you can get a better picture of how we're performing. Because actually, I already dug into your MAP data and did a little analysis of it, and you're really high performing, and so there's aspects that I need to educate you around and how that data works and how it works as a reporting measure. So that'll be part of my presentations this year throughout the year. We'll be starting to give you some assessment literacy and how we measure success.
You're going to assess the board too? They have to pass the
We're all
test?
gonna take the math.
You know, if you're not, and I don't get awed very often, but you guys did a really good job identifying this lady. I mean, if you want to talk about improvement in curriculum, you are off and running.
You'll have concrete products that will give you some real indicators.
And just so that everybody knows, just that we understand Merrill is widely recognized for her, in the education community, for her expertise in MAP.
Oh, thanks.
So,
so just as a, I'm curious, it's fairly easy to test, sort of look at student growth on an academic scale. Like you can look at different academic scores and how they change through time. But how do you measure these other aspects that you mentioned? Like you said, the whole child, and is there any objective way to measure that, or
There
is
are some social emotional indicators out there in screeners, and Pam and I have been talking, and as we build a PBIS that has a behavioral, or PDSS as we're calling it here, we'll be able to start to identify some measures where we survey students and where we take information from students and where teachers can fill out, screen, information.
So the intention is to actually have that kind of data for students, that kind of data, as opposed to academic sort of.
Long-term strategic planning goal is to have a comprehensive way to look at what
I think
we're
that's so important, instead of always hearing about the standardized test, that we realize these children have multifaceted needs. And our teachers
Yeah.
are creative and dynamic people as well that have more than one
Correct.
participation piece in their classroom.
And that's
So-
why I'm anxious to also get some
Yeah.
local performance stuff going on, because we can do some really cool things with performance
Right,
assessments and looking
and
at-
para is still foggy, I think, for a lot of people, so I think that clarification would be really necessary and appreciated.
Thank you.
I'd like to make an observation. Back in June, we had a presentation before you started about the RTI program. And there was quite a bit of effort put into RTI this past year, as you well know. And there was kind of a conclusion made that we were making good progress.
And we are.
Yes. Now, I was just looking at the charts and the numbers, and from fall to winter to spring, our numbers are essentially the same for overall Tier 2 and Tier 3 students. So I would question whether we're making that progress.
I have declines in tiers 2 and 3 by building on my
I didn't
charts
think they were
that
the
I
same.
got.
I didn't get the same
So-
I thought Brian said they went down in those
Yeah,
areas.
and the data that I have indicates that there was a drop, particularly in, we just talked about it
Yeah.
today, in tier
Right.
2 and tier 3. Because I know at Hollywood, we talked this morning, there were 14 students, I think, at the start of the year getting services, and they're down to 6 at the start of this year.
What I'm looking at, Meryl, is the total Tier 2 and Tier 3 for the district. And we've had, it was 305 students in the fall. It was 305 students in the winter, and it was 298 students in the spring. So although there may have been some movement from one school, improvements made, I think overall, I'm not seeing the improvements that
You know what,
have-
maybe we should set up a time to look at what charts you have and what charts I have in my possession, because your numbers don't match.
Well,
That's
these
not
are the
the
charts that were presented to
Well,
us.
and they might be, and I don't know what Brian presented to you prior to me being here, and I know what I have as the RTI charts from the Google Docs that the schools have on current data. So I'd love to set up a time with you to look at what you have and show you what I have in my possession, and let's figure out if those numbers match or not. They sound like they're not matching to me right now, but we can look at that.
Sure. Be happy to.
Because I do think there was some progress made this year, and like after talking to the math people today, I mean, we definitely think we can do better, and that's part of what I just spoke to. But those numbers, I know there was some improvement last year and some decline, so I would love to sit with you if you could come down and we could just compare numbers and take a look at it and see where the disconnect is, so I can wrap my head around what you're looking at.
That wasn't what I took from Brian's
Yeah.
presentation. I
There
had
wasn't,
heard.
there was an improvement,
that there
definitely.
was an
I don't remember
improvement,
these
but-
magnitude, but he did show us some decline in the number of students, I'm pretty sure.
Sherry, what did you just say? I didn't follow you.
From Brian's presentation, I had gotten the impression that we had successes with the RTI support in adding some specialists and extra support for the students that needed it, and we were making progress for them and moving students from different tiers, showing that they didn't need as much support, that they were making gains.
Yeah, I know he made that claim. But
Right.
what I'm saying, after looking at the numbers in the presentation that he provided to us,
We're incorrect.
I don't see that backed up. So,
That'd be great, Randy, for us to sit down
Yeah.
so that I can show you the live data from the schools and we can look at it.
sure.
And then I can put that together maybe for the August board meeting.
That'd be good, actually, maybe get a summary. of
Yeah,
actual
just do a
work.
summary of what I have as data that I'm carrying forward, if that will help you.
Okay. Thanks. So we have these 4 tentative goals here. Does anyone have any comments about these 4 tentative goals as goals that we should pursue for next year? I mean, the first 2 are obvious, the superintendent search and the strategic plan. The instructional program and the student success that Meryl outlined, I mean, I think those sound like very reasonable goals. Does anyone have any?
Well, we also had goals, and I haven't from before, and I'm wondering if any of them will be carrying over. Let's talk about a few that I remember, but I'm not going to remember them all. And I might be talking more about action plans and more
Yeah, there are
specifics.
action plans.
But developing a technology curriculum. What are we doing with the laptops? And I think that was something that was out there. Jeff, you mentioned something earlier today when we spoke about the website. I don't know where that exactly fits in, but maybe.
Well, I think the website is sort of, I've looked at a bunch of websites, and I think our website is sort of middle of the road. It's better than some and worse than others, and it's certainly, I think, something that could be improved. I'm not sure that should be one of our top
I think
board
it's a
level
facet
goals,
of our
though, is the
communication goal that we already have to
Right.
just improve on that
Yeah,
and
but-
make it better transparent for people to understand what's out there and what we're.
Yeah, it's a
make it more
communication.
user-friendly.
But it is, again, is that something that we might do this year or put off until next year? And, I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, we could set it as a district goal that we're going to, improve the website, make it clear and more functional and easy to use. I mean, that certainly would be a,
As far as the strategic planning, though, I had always come under the impression that these are more broad and that seems
Higher
more
level
of an
stuff.
action issue.
Well, I understand that, but I want to get a little bit, what are we exactly working
Right, and
on?
that's what we can talk about on Saturday as well. Is
Yeah, and
what are
I
our
can bring
goals.
some
Okay.
action plans that were left over from the previous goals, because some of those, like the tech curriculum would fit under to this first
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah.
and be transferred over.
And I guess that some of them are things that are on there really not realistic, or are they almost done,
Yeah, we'll
or?
revisit those as part of the strategic planning flushing out of these. I didn't do any of that for tonight because Griff just asked me for the big broad goal for tonight,
Okay,
so.
all right, that's fine, and you're doing the website, I don't know if that's you or not, but, and again, I don't know, what particular goals we might have for, special ed this year, but anyway, all right.
Is that the,
Jeff, I know we've articulated this previously, but I'd like to, bring it up as part of this list, that we just make certain that we do a comprehensive accessibility review of our facilities.
right, that's part of the, I think the architects are supposed to get back to us on
Right.
that shortly, I assume, right? We
Right.
told them in, was it May, to actually go ahead?
We
and do that.
reminded them in May to get ahead on it, but I think it'd be good that we actually put it in
I
our
agree.
goals as well.
I agree.
And then I'd just like to go back to Pat's professional development piece, because you had that on your agenda, and it sort of falls under maybe the action plans, Mary Rose, for some of the instructional pieces. There's a lot going on this summer with professional development, so the Carnegie Math, people are coming out August 11th and 12th for the middle school, and we're gonna spend 2 full days getting people up to speed with that program. I think I already mentioned the Sync Solution course planning meeting that's gonna take place with a consultant at a go-to meeting on August 6th. Pam has planned for the ongoing inclusive education training with Paula Kloof, and so she'll be in our district for a day in August, on also crisis prevention intervention training in August for staff, which is another piece of that inclusive practice, making
Right.
sure that staff know how to respond so that we can continue to support all of that. Don's got some elective tech training that's been going on all summer. And we have a new IEP system coming in. And then I also, as I mentioned, am meeting with the performance appraisal group that's been working on the performance appraisal plans. So,
Aside from that, what are you doing on Tuesday?
I'm writing action plans for the August board meeting.
Wonderful.
So in terms of communications, the, who's now responsible for the website? Who maintains the website?
Well, at this point, it's Donna, but I was looking for actually one of the tech people, but he's on vacation this week, Bob Petito. And once he gets back, that's one of the things we'll be taking a real good look at. How we can expand it, how we can make it more user-friendly.
I brought this to both of your attention. I just, although there was a great effort made last year to improve the website, over the last few months, it has been, I would say, not neglected, but certainly things haven't been updated. And I'm just looking at some of the postings and stuff that were from months ago, and there were a lot of blank sections under events. Now I see that this week we've made
A little bit of progress, but
We made
we
some
would have made
progress.
more if somebody wasn't on vacation. But as
Yeah.
it turns out, the person I was looking for wasn't available, so.
yeah.
That happens. It's summer.
So I guess it seems to me like the website should be a responsibility of one of the key administrators, not relegated to a staff person that is just being told what to put on the website, that somebody's kind of proactive about what should be on the website.
What shouldn't be?
What shouldn't be, right.
I think there's more, not just what's on there, whether it's updated, which obviously should happen, but I think just the structure of the website too, I think could be improved, I think.
Yeah, the overall
So I think, as I
usability.
said, is we've looked at a ton of different websites for schools, and ours is definitely better than some, but it's not as good as others, and it's one of those things where I think we had it clear, like Hinsdale is an example of a website that is just very, very clear, very easy to use. Any kind of information you look for, you can immediately find it. It's very detailed. I think we could move toward that. That would be really great. I'm sure they got 10 people working on it too, I'm sure, but.
Yeah, and just to give that a little context, that when we came on board, I mean, one of the one of Bob's priorities was let's get a new kind of a freshness to the website. The structure, the platform's the same, and long term we had discussed looking at other platforms. A lot of school districts use hosted solutions, which it's platforms that are much easier to manage. You get a lot more individuals involved, teacher involvement in managing their own sites. But within a very consistent framework and structure, and a lot of districts use that, and it also could also be a foundation of a learning management system. And so the changes that were made were very kind of stopgap, like let's get through this, but what is our longer term need from a website, and what other functionalities and looking at other solutions could be incorporated in that would help us determine what platform would be best to move to. So it's definitely doable, again, prioritization and what we want out of it that will help drive what that solution could be.
Does it make sense to put then, we've got these 4 things here. 2 of them are superintendent comprehensive plan. The instructional things that Meryl talked about, the two instructional goals. But does it make sense to add on a couple of others, the accessibility goal that Rich mentioned, a communication goal maybe, which would be an improved website, or at least look into what the options are there? I'm not sure who would be responsible for that, or.
I think we have.
That's the question. That's the $24,000 question or whatever. Because, Griff and I are very limited time-wise, and we wouldn't be the people that would be updating it. That's why I was thinking that maybe one of the tech people could get the feed from, different individuals. I think I was even...
We are transitioning. We're transitioning from Donna in the district office to a tech staff member to do kind of those weekly updates and so forth. And they'll transition as the start of the school year. When Donna gets more into that mode, we'll do the training at the time that.
And I have to update the curriculum section too. It's not updated.
Right. And even the board section, we could make sure we do a better job of who's been trained and what we've been doing lately. Because we have changes that were made.
I think also one thing to point out is that a lot of the news items are actually fed through our Facebook accounts. And so as we transition administration, the outgoing administration hasn't been posting, and then the incoming, it's one of the items to work with that. They actually just recently got their Facebook credentials, so I think you'll see more stuff coming out.
We'll catch up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Kind of going back to the district goals, the overall big picture goals, and I'm not saying these are going to survive the strategic planning, but we had academic and professional excellence, financial and operational excellence, and rigorous communications. And some of Meryl's goals, instructional program and student services, fit in under Again, it was originally designed, or at least interpreted, let's put it that way, that we would have specific initiatives under academic and professional excellence. And so I'm almost wondering if instructional programs and student success are some sort of a rewrite of that overarching goal. And that question doesn't have to be answered now. And as for the website, one was financial and operational excellence. That's where we would have fitted under, as well as the facilities review. So, that was, I think, again, just the way it was kind of structured, going back to last year's copies, and then certain initiatives. And, and these are just ideas for initiatives under these overarching goals. You guys have to, advise us on your priorities and, and what resources you're going to need from us, and, and how long it might take, and, what should we be working on. But that was sort of how it fit in. Education and, the goals went under academic excellence, and technology, I think we put it under financial and operational.
Well, just to move forward, so does it make sense to add, to ask Mr. Pat and Dr. Paul to maybe work with Mr. Trofano and whoever else has the expertise to figure out whether we can and should somehow move ahead to improve the quality of our website? Maybe come back with a recommendation.
Plan, yeah. Well, I think you also added accessibility. So you really are talking about 6 different goals at this point.
The word accessibility, I see that as one topic under facilities.
Right.
Facilities has accessibility, life safety, because that survey has been authorized by the board. There's multiple engagements of our architect. And then the last one that I would put under that is summer of 2016 projects. The school board needs to reach closure so that bids are opened in February in order to be really competitive. So that'll be an early, relatively intensive need for the board's attention in the fall so that we're well positioned for the bidding cycle.
Right, in that context, we've talked about getting a comprehensive, like, 5-year plan and saying we need to replace this, that, and the other thing, and sort of lay out all of the different things that need to be done. And then we can sort of figure out what needs to be prioritized.
Right, and the outcomes of the life safety and the accessibility studies, which we should have deliverables on those studies, would comprise
Drive a lot of that.
significant portions of that 5-year projection. In addition to that, we would be, our intention going back in time was to get that demographic study done so that as we're working with the architect, we're sure that we're capacity issues addressed. So all of this needs to be, put out on the table and then have something tangible for specs to go out on the street and bids to be awarded and opened in February.
Have you spoken to the architects about where they stand on the 2 projects we're working on right now? The life safety and the other one? Life safety and accessibility.
Yeah.
My understanding is that it's moving forward. I just emailed a request for an update. I'll get that to Griff and Pat as far as making sure that we're on the same page as far as expectations. Our expectations was by the end of the summer, both of those studies would be deliverable.
I would reiterate your concern, Rich, about the accessibility. We, after millions of dollars of capital improvements in our district, we still have several entrances and exits to the building that are not accessible, handicapped, wheelchair accessible, and we're behind the curve on this, and we really need to push our architect, I think, to bring us up to par.
All right, good. So it seems like we have a sort of broad consensus on these 6 goals.
6.
6 goals, okay. Any other comments about the...
Well, I would like to see some kind of assessment of our goals from last year and how they fit into it. It just seems to me like we're starting with a new format, new goals, and I'd like to at least see some acknowledgement of that we actually had goals in place and where we are. Even if you just say we don't want to pursue these or that.
No, I hear what you're.
And I will take the time to email everybody last year's format, just so that everybody's familiar with it.
Right. At the same time, I think we should be careful because we have a completely new administration that weren't involved in either the setting the goals or in the execution. I wouldn't want them to spend too much time trying to figure out what the goals were and what was done, not done. It could be unproductive for them. So.
No, I agree, but some of us might have some of them might be useful to be carried over. That's my only point. And I'm beginning to, I would, like to at least know that you've seen them and you said no. They're, it's a piece of paper we read. That's all my only point is because, and I would like to go back and see if any of them were particularly of interest to any of the board members to keep, to move forward on. That's all.
All right, so I guess that's the goals then. The next item on the agenda is the summer school update. So
Steve and Barbie, the Steve and Barbie show.
Summer school started this past Monday, just yesterday as a matter of fact, so we're off to a good start. So we haven't lost any students yet. Teachers came on Friday, got their classrooms set up. Resources were secured last week for teachers to use, for students to use. We secured technology for all the teachers, so we have iPads, Chromebooks, and MacBooks, so that's readily available for teachers to check out and use with students. enrollment seems pretty well.
We have 154 separate enrollments, which is only 117 students because we have a lot of students enrolled in 2 separate courses. What we've been really focusing on, a lot of the enrichment courses didn't get enough enrollment to go through, but I feel like our skill building courses are really robust. We've spent the first couple of days, we have an assessment team pulling students, gathering data to make sure that the teachers have the appropriate information to really tailor the instruction to the individual students' needs.
And the sizes of the groups are very small. I was hearing some really nice numbers.
Yeah.
I think the largest class size is 14. We did start off with the teachers. We used RTI data and map data to give them data start points so they knew where their students were. So we thought that was a good head start for them to begin planning for their students.
And as the assessments wrap up, then our intervention specialists will then be pushing into classrooms and we'll be reallocating the paraprofessional support that we have to make sure that we're really optimizing the usage of our staff. And at the end, we'll reassess and be able to really show what students were able to do.
And knowing both of you, I know this goes without saying, but whatever game plan you've put together, just put that in the folder so we don't have to reinvent the wheel for the next go-round. So.
And I've been impressed with their communication with families, teachers, everything. So thanks you too. It made that part of my transition a lot easier to know that they're doing that.
We do have an updated Facebook page, so that's good.
Cool.
Thanks for the update. Are there any questions about the summer school? Or?
No, just thank you to the teachers that do that because I know that's an extra time commitment and it's important to the students and the families, so thank you.
We'll look forward to hearing how that goes this summer then. Okay, if there are no further questions on that, the next item of business is strategic planning proposals. We have 3 proposals, one from RJM Consulting, which is Bob Madonia. Another is from Consortium for Educational Changes, and the third is from Ecker Group. I believe that the board discussed these 3 different options at the special board meeting in July 7th. So is there a motion at this point to adopt the suggestion of Mr. Pat and Dr. Paul to approve the strategic planning proposal from RGM Consulting as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Oh.
Sorry. No problem.
Is there any discussion?
Juanita, there's a third.
Yeah. Yes, I have a couple questions. Jeff, last week or so, and I kind of reminded you of that this morning, that I asked some questions about, one of the things I noticed with Bob Madonia's proposal was that he is going to train board members to run the focus groups. And I'd like a little bit of information on that, what the commitment is. And I would also like to know what was the approach of the alternative suggestions to that. Jeff, and I know that you did call Bob Madonia, so maybe you can tell us about that.
I can speak to the first question, which is the way he structures things is that he'll meet, if we hire him, he'll meet with the board on Saturday. And he'll ask each board member what their priorities are for the district for the next 5 years. So basically, we'll be talking, but he'll say, Randy, what do you think the top 5 things are for the district in the next 5 years? And he'll go through for all of the board members, and then we will collectively decide on 5 major topics that we want to focus on. And he said there's some certain standard ones, so, it could be like the school culture, it could be curriculum, it could be finance, a different list of things. And once we identified those things, the next step is he gives us, as board members, a 2-hour coaching session on how to lead focus groups. And with that training, we will basically try to find volunteers in the community with different areas of expertise. Maybe 50 or 60 is the average number, I think. And have them come in and divide them up according to their expertise in the focus groups. And I think there's 2 sessions, maybe a 3-hour session on a Friday night, and then like a 4-hour session
Saturday morning,
on a Saturday. in which the focus groups will dive into their topic, and he's got different structured ways of, moving things along and coming up with something that's useful. And so that's then he goes back and refines it, iterates back with the superintendent, the administration, and with the board, and the end result is over a period of time to come out with a polished plan, high-level plan. So that's what Madonia's approach is. I don't know exactly the details of the other two groups, how they do things. I don't know if Mr. Pat has looked into that.
The end result of any of this is your product is only as good as the people that are participating in the process. And the facilitator is just one aspect of it. It's who you draw out from the community. If there's a focus group that's finance, maybe some people in the finance industry. And literally, that's the way to get to a really good end result. I know Dr. Madonia has done these plans for some fairly high-powered districts that I'm familiar with. He did the Lincolnshire plan. He did the Libertyville District 70 plan. And those are two districts that are always very well thought of in the educational business. So
I guess my only question here, this requires a specific commitment of the board that may or may not be.
I think all of from what I can gather, all of the different vendors would require, would want the board to be present at these different sessions and,
like I said, I had asked, anyway, it just doesn't matter. I'm satisfied with your answers. I did have some conversations with Steve Humphrey about that a year ago, so I'm fine with it. But I did notice that specifically in his one-page proposal, he mentions training the board to run these focus groups. And I don't necessarily think that's everybody's approach using the board. And I'm not saying it's good or bad or that it's a pro or a con.
It says right here in the ECRA one that ECRA conducts the focus groups.
So we're not paid enough to
run
these focus groups.
You got your salary tripled. You didn't hear that.
Like I said, I remember talking with Steve about that. And that's part of what you're paying the additional for.
Exactly.
And so, and again, anyway, like I said, thank you for getting that question answered. And
it's important, though, if we ask community members to spend time with us, and parents, that we also make a commitment to spend the time. I think it's important
I'm not questioning it.
To be in the room. I've been in a strategic planning committee, and it is very valuable to have a board member to listen and to give feedback.
Well, Mary Rose raises a very good point, though, because I noticed in the one-page proposal that he does say that he's training us, and I did think to myself, well, who is doing this, and is this every single one of us? Whereas in consortium, and who said that they would have a core team, which to me, I don't know exactly what it's contemplating a few board members and administrators and potentially members of the public, which it sounds like they're doing all of that work. That I think that you're right. I got the impression from Mr. Maldonia's one-page proposal that we were going to be doing quite a bit of the work.
That's what I think he looks at that as a sort of strength of the plan, actually, in the sense that because we're doing the work, we actually know what's going on and we're invested. And also, another thing that he does is, in addition to getting us and the community involved, is he follows up. He says he come back in 12 months. He says a lot of these plans, he says, what can happen is that you do the planning and then they end up sitting on the shelf and collecting dust. And he says he comes back in 12 months and he really wants to see, first of all, the administration come out with an action plan based on the strategic plan. So you get the big picture, the goals here, and then you want to sort of see that, okay, these are the action items. And then he follows up in a year later with the board and with the community members to make sure that actually things are kind of moving in the direction that
which would be beneficial in our case, since in 12 months we'll probably have a superintendent.
My only point in raising this question is not whether it's good that the board is involved or bad. We have three proposals in front of us with three different prices, and they're executed in different ways. Some requires at the end of the process you get a plan, and presumably it's good as another, but some require the board to do more work, which might be fine. And I just think that when proposals are brought before the board, that we ought to know what we're signing on to inform my vote. And that's my only question here. And I was actually, I looked at this last week and I said, oh, this one requires me to facilitate. And, that would be nice that information be brought to the attention of the board before they vote. And others don't require that, or they may require something else. And that's really my only point. When proposals are brought to the board, they should be thoroughly investigated, and the options, pros, cons, and risks associated with each. It's not, it's not just the price. You're buying a package of services, and I like to understand them.
Yeah,
So
I agree with that.
And I agree, and my understanding of this too is if we're being trained to conduct these focus groups, what are we getting for it other than,
Well, he's there the whole time. He's there through the process.
Through the whole focus
Yeah.
groups?
Yeah.
Yes, he's orchestrating.
He's walking around.
You can't tell from the one
Yeah,
page.
no, he
right.
walks around with the focus groups and keeps everybody on task.
Ah, okay, that wasn't.
Because you'll wind up with probably 5, 6 different focus groups. And so he literally is circulating throughout the process,
Right.
watching each of these groups stay on the task that they're committed to.
I think, I think.
It's
that-
not like he's off the site.
I'm
He's
just-
there with you.
With regard, with the limited information we have, I'd like to know more specifics about what is our level of commitment with these, because if we are having to commit ourselves a lot, and I understand the intent to have board involved and have input to some extent, my question is, well, that might impact the decision on who to vote for. If somebody's going to want me to do more work that I don't feel like I should be doing, I don't want to
I
pay
think the level of
for it.
commitment for Madonia is the 2-hour meeting on Saturday.
Okay.
2-hour training session.
And then the
That
focus
he's going
group
to train us to lead a focus group. And then a 7-hour session, which is broken into two parts.
Friday night and
Friday
Saturday
morning. Which are the
Which
focus
would be
When
the
is
actual
this?
work of the.
Have we actually seen this in writing, what the schedule is? Has that been?
That schedule will be
No.
determined by
I
the
think
timing.
that's
that you wanna do.
basically up to us, what
Right.
what the
Oh,
timing is
okay.
on that.
He can do that whenever you want to do
Right,
it.
this would be what we would do. So I think that would be the time commitment that we would have to accept. I think some of the other proposals actually have a longer time commitment. Like if you look at the CEC proposal, there are, I think, at least 3 6-hour sessions, one having the review of the vision and mission statement, one having maybe a focus group kind of thing like Madonia's do. So it'd be basically twice as much time commitment for the board. If you look at the output of these plans, and I've
Well,
looked
I don't know if I don't mean to interrupt, I don't know if I agree with that, because they talk about a core team and a plan team. I'd like
Yeah.
to know who that consists of. For instance, we're on the collective bargaining team, and it only involves 3 of us. Is that what they're similarly contemplated? Because
It's possible, right, we
Right.
could say not everyone is on the team that's doing this, but
right.
All I know is a recommendation has been made to go to the cheapest plan, because the output's gonna be the same, and they're constructed in different ways, and the board's role is probably different in them, and I just think that should be surfaced as part of a recommendation. I'm sorry,
For me, it wasn't just the money, though. Having interviewed, and spoken with him, I felt comfortable with his experience and how much that he's done. And
But have you spoken to the others?
Well, I did read what they provided, and I
Okay.
read his pamphlets that we received, and a lot of the different, and it seemed tailored. We can tailor what's right for our community, which I think is most important. And the most important part for me is getting the community feedback. Are we surveying what people want? And
That's one
not
of the
just
things
about
he
our
does, is
time,
he
but
actually is-
what are our goals?
he sends out a survey
Right.
to the community based on our conversation on Saturday.
Your direction, right?
Basically direction.
Again, for me, it's all, I'm sure he's fine, I like Bob, I think it's really a professional package. I'm just talking that when I vote for something, I would like,
Sure.
I would like this stuff to be presented to me, and that's my only point.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if anybody else, personally, I would still like the opportunity to talk to, to understand the proposals thoroughly, but I understand if if other people are ready to vote, I'm fine with that.
I have to admit, I'm not ready to vote tonight because I think I need to know, I understand to me, the $25,000 plan is completely out of the, it's way out of range from the other two, but I'd like to know what the level of commitment, I understand what Bob's level of commitment is. I'm not clear what the level of commitment is with regard to consortium, and I think I'd like to know
think
more.
in a way
All,
it's-
all the plans are customizable.
I think what's relevant there, I think, is what Pat said earlier, which is in a way, what we get out of this plan is going to be what we put into it. So if we really want to dig into it, we'll probably get more out of it. If we want to do less work, we'll probably get less out of it. So that's sort of up to us. I mean, we probably tell Bob, hey, we don't want to do the focus group. Let the administrators do it.
Or if only three of us want to do focus groups, then
But we
three
might
of
get
us.
less out of it that way.
Right.
So I think it's really
Yeah.
kind of, it's up to us in a way, how much effort we want to put into this.
I don't think it's a question of work and effort. I think this board has demonstrated they're willing to put in a lot of time and a
I'm
lot
not
of
questioning
commitment.
that. No, I'm not
I think it's what exactly our role is
Mm-hmm.
and what exactly is our role in each situation and what is the administrator's
Mm-hmm.
role, what is the time commitment? And, as I said,
think what-
like I said, if people are prepared to vote, fine, but I personally wish more information had been surfaced on all three options.
Well, I'm hearing you're not ready to vote, and I'm hearing Rachel's not ready to vote. I'm having concerns, so there's three of us. I would ask us to consider it next month.
Randy, have you had a chance to review the proposals?
No, I haven't.
I've read the proposals. I'm ready to vote on
I'm ready
this.
to vote.
I'm ready. I've
Bob
read- I've
Madonia
read
made
them.
a
I've read-
fantastic, positive impression on us when we interviewed him. He was a close second to you, Pat, so don't worry about
Yeah,
that.
he was.
But,
I thought Griff was a close second.
point taken, point taken.
My only worry about postponing this a month is that I do think, as a board, we need to start the year with, that we're going to focus on I think we need to bring the seven of us together to focus on something to start moving forward. And I, for me, and I was talking to Jeff earlier about this, I personally think the product of all of these will probably be very similar. So for me, and I think I just think for me it's a time thing. I want to get this started.
Well,
I really do.
I do, but one other thing is I noticed that the delivery date was May 2016, and that was the delivery, and it would seem to me that even using one of the committee meetings to begin to surface some of this information, we could probably still meet that date.
I think that date was just made up. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think that, yeah.
Well, but again, I'm looking at it, and it's something that obviously we can define for ourselves. Like I said, I've had my sense, I'm disappointed at the level of information that was surfaced about these plans, and I've said that before, and, and if people want to, and I am definitely impressed with Bob's package. It's not that, in fact, I'm very impressed with his level of communication. So it's not the issue, but for me is,
And that's not the issue for me either. I did like Bob as well. I think for me is after, I want to know, we just had a significant time commitment with the collective bargaining agreement. Now we're diving into something that is greatly unknown, how much, I know what you said there is, but these 3 meetings that we talked about are going to spur off into other, I don't know how many meetings and how long. I'd
And
like to
again, it
know.
can be customized and it can be determined by how you want it to happen. He really can tailor it to the, what your commitment can be.
and what you want to pay.
Okay.
And it
just-
is important that our district get direction and we come together as a community, and this process is really important
I'm not,
for
no,
us to,
Sherry, don't
I know
mistake
it
it.
takes
I understand.
time, but no,
But
what
all
I'm
three
saying
of
is
those
it
will
takes
help you with
time,
that.
like,
But
no matter
all
what.
three of those options will help you with
They're
that.
all
Yes.
gonna take time, and it's just how it's done, and it's so valuable, and I don't wanna undercut that, this is something we just have to do together.
I know we have to do it. I think it's important too. However, I'd like to know what are we getting for what we're paying and what is the level of commitment expected of us in that process. If
Yeah,
we're gonna
and-
hire somebody and pay them $9,000 and they say, go run with it, I'd like to know that and know how much of that we're expected to do
Well,
versus
again,
somebody who's gonna more
and the other-
facilitate the whole process with a selective team, which is something that sounds attractive to me, and I think that I could delegate my portion of the strategic plan to a team and be comfortable with what they come back with.
I think it's maybe more comfortable for me because I've been on a strategic planning committee, and it's really a simple, lovely process. It doesn't have to be
You know,
overwhelming.
I've done it for my business unit. It's not like I don't know what this is about. The other thing I want to say is 2 of those 3 proposals we had a year ago. Essentially a year's gone by, and I basically still have the hard copy proposal. So it isn't, this board initiated those requests. It was part of Bhavna's goals to do this. So it's not like we don't want to do it and get started. We're being asked to vote for
So
it.
it sounds like 2 different things. One is that you're not happy with the way the proposals were given to us and the level of information. And then there's another thing is in the proposals, we need a little more information about commitment and time and exactly who's going to be doing what.
And the services that are.
Sounds like two different things.
The
we're talking
services
about.
that are being delivered, because I do think that there is, I don't know it in detail, but I do know that they have different approaches to analytics and how they develop information. And anyway, I don't want to belabor it. I've said what I've said, but me personally, I would prefer that somebody makes a commitment to develop the information, really explain the differences in approach in that. And if they don't want to do that, so nobody feels comfortable doing that, then have the people tell us themselves, or I'll make calls. But again, if people are comfortable voting.
Well, my expectation is the end product is going to be the same, because I've read many of these plans. I've read plans from CEC. I've read plans from ECRA. I sent you some of them. They basically come down to the same thing Medonia's does. There's nothing fancy. There's nothing magical. There's nothing paying twice as much. I don't see anything that comes out that's better. In terms of the time commitment, it is a big time commitment. There's no question. We're going to be talking about, how many, 2 hours, 4 hours, plus 7, 11 hours of time spread over 3 or 4 days. So that's definitely a big time commitment. But I'm very hard pressed to imagine the other groups are going to come in and say, yeah, guys, it's going to be 5 hours or 6 hours. I think it's at least as much. So while I hear what you're saying, I don't think that the information we'll get, if we ask, delay, will change the picture very much. So from that point of view, I think, I'd be inclined to go ahead and vote now, but.
Jeff, you can call the
motion's on the
vote.
table based on the administration's recommendation,
Right.
reviewing these 3 proposals. And I accept that. If the debate is that we don't accept that as a whole, then the motion has to come off the table.
Right.
Jeff, it's.
So are we ready to vote then, with all these caveats? Okay, Juanita, could you call the roll?
So just to be clear, we're voting on
Approving That's
RJM's
correct.
proposal. Okay.
as recommended.
As recommended.
Sherry Kleiber,
Aye.
Rachel Morella,
No?
Randy Brockway,
No.
Linda Murphy,
Aye.
Rich Regan,
Aye.
Mary Rose Mangia,
No.
and Jeff Miller,
Aye.
and the motion is passed.
So we will be meeting on Saturday. I guess the next question is what time we want to meet on Saturday. It's a 2-hour meeting. What's a good time? 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock?
Scheduled from 9 to 12.
9 to 12?
Yes, don't we already have that blocked in our calendar
Okay.
on the 25th from 9 to
Isn't that
12?
good for everyone? Okay. So with this, we should come prepared on Saturday with what our priorities are. So we should be able to say to Madonia, we really care about this, and this, and so we can actually get going, and start into the process.
And Griff will be there on Saturday.
Okay. And
Will you
there?
be, Bob? I'm sorry, Pat, will you be?
Well, we can't because we'd be eating up 2 days again.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
wanted to clarify, that's all.
Were you planning to be there as well, Meryl? Okay.
Great.
Good. So, okay, that's set for Saturday. Okay, the next item is discussion of the tentative budget. Does anyone have any questions about the tentative budget that Mr. Sellers put together last month? Okay, if there's no questions about the tentative budget, the next item is old business. I guess there is no old business. Finally, we come to a second public comment period. If anyone has any comments. No. Mary?
I'm up here with unplanned and unwritten comment now.
Yep.
Because of what I heard in the discussions going on tonight. And let me just say, I'm up here under a different hat now than I was an hour and a half ago. Before I was speaking to you as Rain, I was speaking collectively for, there's a core group of 8 of us that kind of bring together the data, disseminate. We go out and collect and research and whatnot, and work in a variety of different capacities to do that, and then essentially pull and disseminate information among about 100 people in the community. Now, I'm talking to you as Mary Judy, a parent who's been in the community about 11 years now, and I wear a few different hats. One of them is as an ISBE consultant. So because I am a parent who has had a child with an IEP for many years in the state of Illinois, they think there's a little bit of value to that. I actually make more than you board members do. Not much, but I do make more. So I'm kind of pulling on that ISBE hat right now. And I'm going to go back to something that Meryl was talking about, and I want to lay some context because I have been in this district for about 11 years now. So Randy brought up a lot of questions about declining numbers, meaning, you know, tier 2, tier 3 services, number of kids receiving them, blah, blah, blah. When Mary Polk came into this district in 2006, there were, I don't remember the exact number, but it was 36 or 38 kids receiving special education services. I mean, it was nothing. And yes, we were a smaller district. We weren't that significantly smaller. Fast forward to the time when Mary resigned and the interim, your predecessors came in here. And at that point, we were, I want to say, somewhere in the neighborhood of 320 kids receiving services in the district. Okay, so while Dr. Lambertson liked to brag about, oh, I increased funding to special education threefold, well, guess what? Kids receiving services increased tenfold under his watch. So it didn't keep up. The reason I bring that up is because Pam's predecessors, the interim special education directors, came in and they were really, really stuck on these numbers. They were really stuck on the fact that I think it was 18% of our student population was identified for special education services. And they were insistent, and let me tell you, I can't tell you how many vocal arguments I had with them because they were insistent that the state average was 10%. Well, when those women worked for ISBE, yes, that's what it was. But they hadn't worked for ISBE since like 2006 or something. The current numbers that we were working off of as a state average were more like 14% of the kids in the state of Illinois were receiving IEPs. Now, the reason I'm laying that context is to say that what I do for ISBE is when a school gets flagged for focus monitoring, that means their numbers aren't aligning correctly. They're not aligning with state goals, okay? These numbers are really, really elusive. I can tell you that I have gone into schools where we are really upset. The state is, gotta make change, gotta make change, gotta make change, because we're not meeting our 52% of kids receiving 80% of their education, in a general education classroom, 80% of the time or more. Does that get any more confusing for you? You want to try and tell me how many kids that is, Linda? No. It doesn't work, okay? The numbers are really funky when it comes to special education, because I can tell you I've been in schools of 800 kids pre-K through 5, and we've got 60 kids identified for special education. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's below 10%. It's minimal amount of kids identified. These are happy kids, these are happy parents, these are happy teachers. The reason they have low identification is because they're teaching in an inclusive environment so well. They're taking practices and that would, in a district like ours, quite honestly, they're identified as special education practices. In many schools, you have low identification because they're just applying common sense approaches, and Meryl's shaking her head. The numbers, you have to be really cautious about numbers, because as I sat in that school of 800 kids with 60 identified, and here I am with the state saying, you're not doing your jobs, teachers and administrators, because these kids are not in their classroom, in the gen ed classrooms enough of the time. Well, it's because they're only identifying the kids that have the very highest need. So yeah, you've got an entire third grade class that's identified for special education classes, but those kids in that particular group, they really need it. And those teachers are giving them intensive training that they need, okay? So be cautious when you're looking at these numbers. Be really, really cautious. And when you're saying, that's all a statement in defense of the educators, okay? Because our numbers can very well be declining because they're doing a really, really good job. But also be cautious because the predecessors of all of you people sitting in, well, except for, like Aaron and Steve, who've been here with me for God knows how long, most of you weren't here as parents of special education kids back in the day. And so we may have changed. We changed for the better in a lot of ways. But this past 2 years, with all kinds of change and all kinds of, from my perspective as a parent who was very involved, not only with my child's education, but a lot of people's kids in this district, a lot. We didn't see improvement in the last 2 years. We saw a lot of struggle, a lot of pain. And it was because that administration seemed extremely focused on these numbers. They were really, really focused. They weren't necessary, and they were really good at marketing things, but they weren't really good at truly showing how the kids are improving. Each individual child was improving. How each individual child was meeting their goals. And so what I'm saying to you is please make sure that the kids are actually improving. Don't worry so much about who's tier 2, who's tier 3. You won't have as many, you won't have as many RTI kids if the teachers just naturally make changes within their classes. They see that, that kid's fidgety. Well, like most 7-year-olds aren't, right? But maybe that kid needs to be able to stand, or maybe that kid needs to pace, or he needs to run to the office on an errand. And if a teacher is just naturally going to do those things, rather than get mad and punish the kid because he's fidgety, guess what? We don't have to identify. And that's a great thing. That's a much better thing than identifying. But that takes a change in mindset. All right? And it can't be a focus on, we're not changing our mindset to focus on numbers. We're changing our mindset to making sure the kids are getting what they need. So that's my, kind of defense of that whole system and what I've seen happen as a parent. Okay? Now, I don't know how many of you know at this point, I don't have any kids in special ed or in District 96 because they've aged out. But I don't have any kids in public education anymore either. I have 2 high schoolers in private education. And one of the reasons that I have one of them in private education is because I wasn't going to deal with the IEP nonsense anymore. I was not going to, I'm just not doing it. And that can also be a reason that your numbers are changing. And I was having this discussion with Jeff on the street, not Jeff, excuse me, with Rich, just last night. There's a lot of families in District 96 that are taking their kids to private education. And the ones I'm hearing from are special education students that are leaving because they can't get what they need for their kids. So your numbers can also be changing because the students are leaving. So as state-run school, it's illegal for you to impose a practice that essentially takes affluent families and says, we're not gonna help your kid. You'd probably be better at that private school. You can't do that. You have to do everything you can to make sure that it's a welcoming process, that the kids are getting what they need. Don't focus on the numbers, focus on truly improving the education of our kids, truly improving the overall goals, truly making sure that our kids are learning and feeling welcome and at home in their community. So that's my soapbox.
Okay.
So the next item is future meeting dates. We have a meeting on July 25th, special meeting on Saturday at 9 a.m. We have a committee meeting of the whole.
There's a time change.
It's at 7 p.m. The time on the sheet is wrong. It's 7 p.m. Rather than 6 p.m. And then we have next regular business meeting on August 18th at 6:30. Then next item is there are a bunch of information items that are in the board book. Does anyone have any comments about the information items as presented in the board book? Then the final, I think there's no reason to go into closed session again, I believe. Is that right?
Good, I'm good with that.
Okay, and then I guess the meeting is adjourned.